He hadn't planned to fall in love again. Not after everything he'd lost. Jason was a single dad who spent his days juggling construction work and bedtime stories, just trying to give his little girl a better life. His best friend had set him up on a blind date, saying he needed to start living again. Jason wasn't interested, but when he walked into that quiet rooftop restaurant and saw her sitting there, his world stopped. It was Emily. The same Emily he'd once dreamed of marrying, the one who left town a decade ago chasing her big city dreams. She looked different now, confident, graceful, wrapped in quiet power. But those same brown eyes still carried that warmth that once made him believe in forever. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The wind carried the faint sound of city traffic below, and time itself seemed to hesitate between them. Jason managed a smile, nervous and unsure, while Emily looked at him like she couldn't believe what she was seeing. Their small talk started awkwardly, about weather, work, and life, but the layers of the past started slipping through every glance. When the waiter mentioned Ms. Carter's company, Jason froze. He hadn't realized she was the Emily Carter, the CEO whose new firm was making headlines. The millionaire sitting across from him was the same girl who once dreamed of opening a bakery and growing old in a small town. He smiled, half proud, half distant, wondering if he even belonged in her world anymore. Emily, though, didn't see a man out of place. She saw the boy who once believed in her when no one else did. As Jason talked about his daughter, something shifted in her eyes. Success had given her everything, except love, except home. She had built empires, traveled the world, but in that moment, all she could think about was how his voice still made her heart quiet. She laughed at his clumsy humor, felt tears press behind her smile when he mentioned how hard parenting could be. For the first time in years, she didn't feel like a CEO. She felt like Emily again, the girl who used to watch sunsets with him from the back of his old truck. When the night ended, Jason walked her to her car. The city lights reflected in her eyes as she turned to him, whispering, "It's strange, isn't it, after all these years?" He nodded, unsure if this was fate or just a cruel reminder of what once was. But before he could step back, she reached for his hand, softly, like she used to, and said, "Don't disappear this time." That one line cracked something inside him. The millionaire, the CEO, the woman the world admired, was still the same person who once loved him with her whole heart. And as she drove away, Jason stood under the golden glow of the streetlights, realizing that maybe, just maybe, love had come back, not to remind him of the past, but to give him a second chance. Jason couldn't sleep that night. He kept replaying every detail, the sound of her laughter, the way she looked at him when he talked about his daughter, and that final touch of her hand that lingered like a heartbeat. For years, he'd believed some doors were meant to stay closed. But now, seeing Emily again had cracked something open inside him. The next morning, as sunlight filtered through the small apartment, his daughter Lily noticed the distant look on his face. "Daddy, are you okay?" she asked, her tiny voice pulling him back. He smiled, brushed her hair aside, and whispered, "Yeah, sweetheart, just remembering someone special." He didn't tell her that the woman he once loved now owned half the skyline. All he knew was that Emily Carter was back in his world, and this time, fate wasn't asking for permission. Emily, on the other hand, sat in her penthouse staring out at the city that had once been her battlefield. She had everything she'd dreamed of: power, respect, wealth. Yet last night, sitting across from Jason, she realized how hollow those victories felt. She remembered his hands calloused from work, but gentle when he held her years ago. He hadn't changed much, except now there was a quiet strength in his eyes that came from surviving pain. She wanted to call him, to see him again, but fear tugged at her. What if he thought she'd become untouchable? What if he didn't want her world, the world of meetings, headlines, and endless expectations? Still, something deep inside her whispered that this time, she shouldn't let him walk away. A week later, destiny intervened. Jason was renovating an old community center, trying to keep his small business alive. When he heard the new project sponsor was visiting, he expected another corporate suit. But when Emily walked in, Elegant, poised, and radiant, he nearly dropped his hammer. "You're the sponsor?" he blurted, stunned. She smiled softly, a hint of mischief in her eyes. "I told you I didn't want to disappear." They talked between paint cans and blueprints, laughter echoing through the dusty hallways like old times. For the first time in years, both of them felt real. No pretense, no distance, just two souls trying to find their way back. Emily even knelt down to talk with Lily when she came by after school, and the way she listened, really listened, made Jason's heart ache with something between hope and fear. Days turned into weeks, and the three of them began spending more time together. Late-night dinners turned into quiet walks, business meetings into shared moments filled with stolen glances. Emily found herself baking cookies with Lily, laughing over flower fights, while Jason watched from the doorway, realizing that this woman, this powerful CEO, still had the same heart she always did. But just as things began to feel right, an old wound returned. The media discovered their connection. Headlines screamed, "CEO Emily Carter dating construction worker, romance or reckless?" Suddenly, the world that once worshipped her now judged her. Cameras followed them, reporters hounded Jason at work, and Lily's school started whispering. Emily's world was spinning out of control, and Jason had to decide, would he walk away again to protect his daughter? Or finally fight for the love he never stopped believing in? Jason stared at the newspaper headlines in disbelief. The photo splashed across the front page showed him holding Emily's hand outside the community center, smiling in a rare moment of peace. Now, that moment had been twisted into something ugly, gossip, judgment, and speculation. Reporters were calling his phone nonstop. Customers were canceling renovation contracts, and Lily had come home from school in tears because someone had called her father the gold digger dating a CEO. Jason's jaw tightened as he hugged his daughter close, whispering, "It's okay, sweetheart. None of that's true." But deep down, he wondered if Emily's world and his could ever really fit together. Meanwhile, Emily sat in her corner office, staring at the glass walls that once made her feel powerful but now felt like a cage. Her board of directors had called an emergency meeting, worried that her personal scandal was damaging the company's image. They wanted her to distance herself from Jason, to make a public statement ending the relationship. For the first time in years, she felt her heart and career collide in a war she couldn't balance. "You've worked too hard to throw this away," one executive told her. But Emily's mind wasn't on the company's stock value. It was on the man who'd once fixed her old bicycle in the rain, who had nothing to give but gave everything anyway. When the meeting ended, she turned off her phone, walked out of her building, and drove straight to Jason's small apartment. He was sitting on the porch, exhaustion painted across his face. She approached quietly, unsure what to say. "You shouldn't be here," he muttered, not looking up. "They're already tearing your life apart because of me." Emily knelt in front of him, her voice trembling. "Jason, I've spent years chasing success, thinking it would make me whole. But last night I realized something. I was never happier than when I was with you. I don't care what they say. I don't care what I lose. I just don't want to lose you again." For a moment, the world went still. Jason looked into her eyes and saw not a CEO, not a millionaire, but the same girl who once shared peanut butter sandwiches on the hood of his truck. "You don't belong in my world, Emily," he whispered. "Maybe," she said softly, "but I want to belong in yours." Days passed, and the storm began to settle. The headlines slowly shifted as Emily made a bold move. She held a press conference and told the truth. "Yes," she said before the cameras, her voice steady, "I am seeing Jason Miller. He's not a scandal. He's the man who reminded me that love is worth more than money, and integrity is worth more than status." The room went silent, and somewhere in the back, Jason watched, his heart swelling with something he hadn't felt in years: pride. When she stepped down from the podium, their eyes met across the crowd. Later that night, she found him standing outside the same restaurant where they first met again. He smiled, this time without hesitation, and said, "You sure you're ready for this?" She took his hand and whispered, "I've been ready for 10 years." and under the glow of city lights, with Lily asleep in the car and the world finally fading into quiet, Jason kissed her, not as the man who lost her once, but as the man who finally found his forever.